how to create a color based on a value, and once we hit that value it changes here in React Chart.js. So to change the color of our bar chart when we hit 5, what we want to do is here an instant transition of color. For that I'm going to use the gradual or gradient effect, but for that with a instant transition. So let's start to work on this. So the first thing what we need to do is here we're going to create a callback functionality. So we're going to say your context, and then in here we're going to say constant chart equals the context.chart, and this is necessary because we're going to use an object destruction later on or after this immediately. So it's a constant, and then we're going to do an object destruction equals the chart itself. And then what we want to do here is we want to grab here the CTX and the chart area. The reason why we're doing this immediately is because we want to make sure that the chart area is loaded. And if you refresh this, you can see here this animation. This makes it at the very first second not load the chart area. So what we have to do here is to filter out or to avoid this error by saying if there is no chart area, in that case, make sure we spell it correctly, in that case we want to say return null as a value. So once it did that, then we can say here return, and we're going to get here the get gradient, and of course here we're going to just grab here the chart object. Alright, so once we did that, we're not done, but we have here this function that we want to use. So I'm going to grab this, copy that, and then in here we're going to say enter, enter, and I'm going to say here function get gradient chart. Then within here we can do another object destructuring. So in here I'm going to say constant CTX comma chart area, and then in the chart area we have the top, bottom, left, and right, and make sure we have a comma here between, although we won't be using them all, but just in case having them here. So then we're going to say here comma, and we want to have the scales as well, and the scales we say X and Y. So then we're going to say equals chart. So once we did this, we have now all the information we need to create a gradient effect. So what we're going to do here right now is we're going to say constant, or say gradient segment, and then what I want to do here is equal ctx.create a linear gradient effect. However, our linear gradient effect will not be based on the x, or basically this is the x coordinate, the y coordinate, and then here we have here the x coordinate at the end, which is the x end, and we have here the y end. So this is the x start and the y start. So we will not need anything of the x value because we don't want to go from left to right, but we want to go from top to bottom, and then highlight everything from the bottom below 5 is red and everything above 5 is green. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say here, we can grab here, I guess we can start from top to bottom here. We can say here we start at the bottom, so we put in bottom at the bottom, so we're putting at the bottom at the y, and then we're going to say here top, so we're moving from bottom to the top. Once we did this, we need to start to calculate something, and the reason what we need to calculate is because in a, well, we can just make that first. In a gradient color, we have basically these color options. So let's make that one. Let's say gradient segment dot add color stop. So what we want to do here, we start at the bottom. We say here at the 0. That's 0 pixels, and then we make this one red. So we start with red. Then after a certain amount of pixels, we want to go here, and we have this instant transition. To do this, let's do it right now, just hard code it, and after we're going to soft code them. So we're going to put in here multiples. So we have here this, and let's say here 0.5, so 50%. Halfway through, it will eventually become a red color as well, but then after it, we want to jump immediately to a green color. And then we'll keep it green until we have the value of 1. The value of 1 and 0 here refers to 100% and 0%. The starting point is 50%. So if I save this right now and refresh, alright, interesting, it doesn't work yet. And the reason why it doesn't work yet is because I forgot to return this value. So I want to return, of course, the gradient segment here. Save this. There you are. So we have this, but of course I want to be exactly on this line here, on this grid line here. So how do we do this? Well, we can just calculate quickly. What we have to do is we have to calculate basically the pixel amount from this point all the way down and calculate that into a percentage value like this. So that should be maybe something about 0.6, but let's calculate to be certain. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say here a let value of line or border, something like that. Border, I'll just give it like border as a term. And then here, what we're going to do here is we want to start at the bottom. So we say here the bottom pixels. And why the bottom? Because the bottom pixels will be the full amount from very top to the bottom here, which would be an exact amount. How much that is, I don't know exactly, but we can calculate it by doing console log. We can see that immediately. But it doesn't matter. But it's basically this area here. We will calculate that one. And then we say minus, and then we need to grab the pixel coordinate of, for example, this one here. We want to know what's the pixel on this one here. This is the reason why we have the Y scale here, or this here, with the object destructuring of the Y scale. So we're going to say here, Y.scales. Oh, sorry, not Y.scales. We say Y. And get pixel for value, which is a built-in Chartjs function. I want the value of 5 in this case. So once we did that, then what I want to do is I want to divide that because I need to get the percentage value. And we're going to say here, bottom minus top. And the reason why, because it calculates the bottom, but the bottom is this point, including this top of the top here, that should be excluded. So what we have to do is then just delete or remove that amount, deduct that by saying the top, which will calculate this point to somewhere here, that's maybe 25 pixels, and then just remove that from the bottom. So once we did this, we get here now a value. Let's do a console log on the value of border. Copy this border and put this border in here because I want to stop there the red and continue with the green. If I save this, refresh, alright, interesting, we're getting a error here. Console log, let's see here, what is exactly the error? Alright, so you can see here, what do we get? We get a value that is far too high, so that's not what I want. Well, apparently here I'm just making here a tiny mistake. I want to make sure that this gets priority, so this will be calculated, and this one here needs to be calculated as well. So if I save this, refresh, there we are. So what happens is if it gets higher than 1, which is above the 100%, it gives an error. So right now you can see here we have this. Let's change the value to number 6. If I save that, refresh, now it moves to 6, and let's go to number 4 just to confirm. If I put it on 4, save, you see here it jumps to 4 nicely, and that's one of them. So what I want to do as a final, because if you do this here, you can see we're getting an error because we cannot hide this. The reason why you cannot hide this is because the formula is being calculated and then we hit above the 1 value, and that's what we need to solve here now. So what I'm going to do here, and this is the reason why I had the let value already, this border, or maybe this line, needs to have a filter. So we're going to say if this border will be larger than 1, in that case I need to force it into the value of 1. Then I will say here border equals 1. By doing this I force it into a value, save that, and refresh. And as you can see here now, we can click this and it will show nicely. And you can see here if we click on this, it becomes too high, but it will force it into a value of 1. So it will understand exactly that what we need to do. And that's it.